Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is a starter build guide for Boneshatter Juggernaut, and the second video of Binu's melee series. The first episode was a melee act guide, and we highly recommend to watch it before you start this one if you're a beginner. In this video, we'll explain about the build mechanism in detail at each stage of the build. This build consists of 3 stages. The first is a build-up setting for mapping until you reach red maps. Secondly, a starter setting starting from red maps to the Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds. You can clear up to Uber Elder with this build if your control allows. The last is an endgame setting for Uber bosses. If you're looking for a new build, this build is more focused on defense and fast mapping, and it does not have very high DPS. And to be honest, this build is heavily influenced by your control, and it won't be easy for everyone to kill Uber boss with it. So if you want to kill Uber boss for the first time or want to do boss farmings, this build would not be the best choice. Like mentioned earlier, this build is for those who want fast farming through Atlas mapping. Or if you want to try crafting, this build would be great for you because you absolutely can. Because there will be a separate weapon crafting guide video coming soon. Let's briefly talk about the performance of the build. If you're new to Path of Exile, we are confident to say that Boneshatter Juggernaut's performance is already validated. Multiple gauntlet winner Darky killing Uber Cyrus with 0 link Boneshatter Juggernaut in solo self-found hardcore was wild too. Well, of course it was possible because it's him. Anyway, this build can be incredibly powerful, especially if you can get your hands on a good weapon. Please pay your full attention to this video as melee build depends on a lot on your know-how. This guide has all of Binu's knowledge gained from what he experienced in solo self-found hardcore, streamer teamfight, and the Gauntlet League. As for currency farming with the build, Atlas mapping is the most efficient. Among encounters, Expedition and Blight are recommended. Guardian Run is also good when you're close to an endgame setting. Especially, Expedition farming has improved a lot due to a new passive node in Leech Mastery. Personally, Binu focused on Atlas mapping because of the new league content. Forges are simply too charming to turn away for melee. Now, let's move on to the main skill. Boneshatter is a very powerful skill compared to other melee skills. It deals high damage, and when used with Ancestral Cry, it strikes additional enemies. Also, Boneshatter releases a pulse when stunning an enemy, which gives multiple damage. So white and blue mobs will just melt away just by tapping them. That's why Boneshatter is perfect for mapping. It's also quite great for Maven's Invitation, the Twisted and the Hidden, because the build is efficient against a large number of mobs. The best thing about Boneshatter is trauma. Boneshatter stacks a trauma point by hitting, and damage is increased by 4% per trauma. This means that 20 trauma points are equal to 80% increased damage, which is pretty amazing. On top of this, faster attack speed helps to gain trauma points faster for higher DPS. However, all of that sounds too good to be true. Boneshatter gives you damage per trauma as well, so using Boneshatter is just like causing self-injury. At Boneshatter level 20, 1 trauma point deals 194 physical damage against you, so 20 stacked trauma deal almost 4,000 physical damage. For this reason, having high physical damage reduction is important in order to minimize the self-injury from Boneshatter. It'll increase survival during mapping as well. The simplest way to increase physical damage reduction is increasing armor. You would probably already know that how good determination is, especially if you've watched the previous melee act guide already. Juggernaut can double armor from equipped body armor from an Ascendancy node Unbreakable, and you can gain a lot of physical damage reduction from it. However, armor has limitations. If physical damage taken is increased, physical damage reduction from armor is decreased. To simply put, in the beginning when physical damage taken is low, maximum 90% of physical damage reduction can be achieved from armor. But as damage taken is increased towards endgame, this efficiency is decreased. When 20 trauma points deal 4k self-injury, even 50k armor only has 55 physical damage reduction rate. So we need to increase physical damage reduction directly. The first is using Endurance Charge. Endurance Charge gives physical damage reduction and elemental resistances for each Endurance Charge they have, and it can be stacked up to 3. Totally 12% of physical damage reduction can be gained from Endurance Charge, and this Endurance Charge is obtained from inexorable node in the passive tree. The second is using the Pantheon. Use Lunaries during mapping and Solaris during boss fights to gain maximum 8% physical damage reduction, and the Sub-Pantheon Tukohama will give additional 9% physical damage reduction when you are stationary. Since Juggernaut deals stationary mostly, Tukohama is such a good pair with the build. The third is using a modifier on a body armor. Armor and additional physical damage reduction are priorities when you select a body armor. Starting from 3.21 League, Life Mastery has a new node that increases 15% maximum life if there are no life mods on equipped body armor. So life mod is not critically essential anymore, and both Juggernaut and Slayer should prioritize these two. The fourth is Molten Shell. Molten Shell itself does not increase armor, but it's a perfect match for builds that has high armor. Even though it was nerfed in 3.21 League, it still provides additional 5k maximum life with this build. Due to Molten Shell, the build can ignore self-injury from Trauma stacks or can endure Cyrus's Slam from Meteor Maze. If Boneshatter's self-injury is too much because your setting isn't ready yet, you can just lower your gem level until you're ready. It'll remove most of self-injury damage. Let's take a look of skill settings. Main attack setting for Boneshatter would look like this. This is the final 6-link setting. Use 4-link in a build-up stage and gradually add Impale support and melee physical damage support in order. Next is totem skills. These two totems would deal independently, but more importantly, they enhance you while active. The degree of enhancing is quite large. Your DPS would be almost twice stronger with both totems. So it is very important to use totems in boss fights. Note that they don't need to be linked all together, and if all of this is too much to control, it's okay to use regular Ancestral or Chief instead of Vaal skill. Next is Aura skills. Determination increases armor and War Banner increases accuracy. When War Banner is placed on the ground in boss fights, it gives you a great deal of buff. Place the banner and retrieve it when it's off. Your accuracy won't be buffed and DPS will be halved if it's not retrieved in time. Pride is a powerful dealing aura, but you won't be able to use it during build-up stage due to mana reservations. You can use Herald of Purity during build-up stage and switch to Pride when you move on to a starter stage. Next is a setting for spells cost when damage taken. Vulnerability in Molten Shell is triggered by cast when damage taken support, and life tap support makes spells to consume life instead of mana. Life tap support is not a must at this point. It can be added when Pride begins to be used in a starter stage. Maintain level 1 for cast when damage taken support and level 5 for vulnerability at first. And then level up to 11 and 14 each when your life reaches 4k. Molten Shell needs to be maintained at level 1 because with higher gem level, you won't be able to clear maps with elemental damage reflect mods. Keeping level 1 is also alright because the amount of armor increase to the gem level is not significant. In an endgame setting, one more curse will be added to here. We'll share the details later. Next is movement skills. Leap Slam and Frost Blink are used for moving. However, you can use only one up to your preference. Lastly, these two skills remain. If you're short on sockets, Blood Rage may be removed. Note that Blood Rage's dexterity requirement is pretty high, so you need to pay a little bit of attention when you level it up. Now, let's move on to a build-up setting. Build-up setting begins right after Act 10 until you get into red maps. You'll be about level 85 when you're ready to move on to a starter stage. Prioritizing maximum life and elemental resistance on armors is the same as in Acts. You also need to check Chaos Resistance and chance to suppress spell damage as well. For the Chaos Res and spell suppression, no need to opt for high values though. Try to have them as much as possible as long as you don't lose elemental res. Armors with spell suppression are mostly dexterity based, so it might be not easy to off-color it with red sockets. Working on chance to suppress spell damage is recommended when you're about halfway through yellow maps. You'll be running out of Jeweler's Orb and Chromatic Orb if you craft off colors too often. Accessories are the same as armors. Prioritize maximum life and elemental resistance, and look for accuracy. Turquoise amulet and amethyst rings are recommended here. On an amulet, enchant Quick Step with 2 Ember Oils and 1 Verdant Oil. Alternatively, you can enchant Kinetic Impact with 1 Ember Oil, 1 Violet Oil, and 1 Azure Oil. Kinetic Impact is also a good enchant that increases DPS by 10%. You should do enchantment according to your oil inventory. As for a belt, Stygian Vice with an Abyss Jewel is the best option. Abyss Jewel can give you additional maximum life and chance to avoid being shocked. Flasks are as important as weapons, so please do not skip this part. You must complete this setting before you reach yellow maps. We have 5 flask slots to fill. The first is Life Flask. Use a Divine Life Flask with a bubbling prefix and a suffix immunity to bleeding and corrupted blood during effect. Use Orb of Alteration on a flask until you get a bubbling prefix only, and go to the menagerie to craft a suffix. The second is Mana Flask. Use an Eternal or Divine Mana Flask with a prefix Enduring. Without Enduring prefix, you'll be running low on mana. For the rest 3, use Granny Flask, Silver Flask, and Quicksilver Flask with following suffixes. They can be on any flasks among 3. Before moving on to weapon, we need to understand what PDPS is. It's an abbreviation for physical damage per second. It's a weapon's average physical damage multiplied by its attack speed. Skill's damage is calculated based on this PDPS, so the higher the value, the stronger the weapon. During build-up stage after Act 10, 500 PDPS is enough. To get a decent weapon, diligently identify all rare two-hand axes you see on the ground, and find an axe with physical flat damage and increased attack speed mods. If you found a nice weapon on the ground, add physical damage with Impale option on the crafting bench. If you don't have the Impale option yet, other options are alright. And no need to do 8 chaos crafting, 3 chaos is just alright at this stage. However, if a base axe isn't good enough, your chaos won't worth it, and thus it is important to select a good base axe. Despot Axe is the best choice, and Sundering Axe, Azumite Axe, Val Axe, and Void Axe are also good at this stage. This is the passive tree for a build-up stage. Moving on to a starter setting. It begins from red maps to the Searing Exarch and the Eater of Worlds. Levels range from 92 to 95. The build is incredibly tanky, so you'll be able to kill Uber Elder if you're skilled enough. In the starter stage, helmet and gloves should have 10% spell suppression or above. 20 to 30 chaos res is okay for mapping, so prioritize spell suppression first. Clear all expedition encounters and do logbook runs as many as possible. You'll be able to pick up an armor with spell suppression easier than you thought. Gloves must have increased attack and cast speed while focused mod. The mod can be obtained from veiled items. Or alternatively, using Tanuahi for gloves can be an option. This glove in fact can be equipped until the endgame setting by losing some spell suppression. Boots should have a 50% chance to avoid being shocked or above. There are 2 ways to craft boots. The first way is using Essence of Torment. Screaming Essence of Torment is just alright. Adding a spell suppression would be not easy this way, however having chance to avoid being shocked is much more important. The second is using Icores and Embers to craft boots like this. Icores and Embers cost quite a lot in the early league, so save them for an endgame setting. Using Essence is much more economical for now. During a starter stage, surprisingly, high maximum life could be a problem. Precise technique will be inactive if maximum life is higher than accuracy rating. So check your stats every time you change life mods on your gear. Precise technique increases attack damage by 40%, which is quite a lot. Accessories needs to be crafted on the bench with reducing total mana cost of skills. This mod can be also gained from veiled items. 2 accessories need to have this mod. As for anointment on an amulet, go for Inveterate. Keep the belt from a build-up setting, but get an Abyss Jewel with higher chance to avoid being shocked. For flasks, keep the setting from a build-up stage. If you've managed to craft mana cost mod on 2 accessories, remove a mana flask and add a quartz flask instead. If you couldn't get an Abyss Jewel with shock avoidance, add chance to avoid being shocked during effect mod to a quartz flask. Starting from red maps, PDPS above 550 is recommended. 2-hand axe above 550 PDPS is quite expensive in early league, but it's not that difficult to craft. The most important option to check in the weapon is of course PDPS. Chance to deal double damage while focused mod is also great to have on a weapon. It has the same effect as having more than 150 PDPS in this build. A weapon with 550 PDPS and a chance to deal double damage while focused is same as a 700 PDPS weapon. Don't miss the upcoming weapon crafting video for more. This is the passive tree for a starter stage. Like mentioned before, be aware of maximum life being higher than accuracy rating. If your life is higher, then remove points from life nodes and use them on these accuracy nodes. It's finally the time for the endgame setting. It'll be explained through a POV. Endgame setting has a DPS between 6 million to 10 million and roughly 300k effective hit pool. Binu used a very similar setting in the recent gauntlet. It has 3 times more DPS than Binu's gauntlet setting for Uber Elder, and about twice more DPS than Binu's solo self-found Uber Shaper, Uber Cyrus, and Uber Searing Exarch. But like mentioned before, this build does not have a skyrocketing DPS, and things depend a lot on your control. Still, most users would be able to clear Uber Elder with it. First of all, get a weapon with more than 800 PDPS and chance to deal double damage while focused. Get 100% spell suppression and 100% shock avoidance from armors. Use a Watcher's Eye with a mod Impales You inflict last 2 additional hits while using Pride. Change Anointment and Amulet to Whispers of Doom. And link Punishment with Cast when Damage Taken setting. Punishment and Vulnerability are used together this way. Lastly, replace skill gems with awakened gems and alternate quality gems accordingly. If you've managed to proceed up to here, we're sure you have quite a lot of knowledge by yourself. Feel free to ask questions in the comment section about the build. And if you're still here, thank you for coming all the way with us. Bye!